It was a bright Saturday afternoon at Best Mall, the kind of day when families roamed the halls, teenagers laughed over overpriced smoothies, and the scent of fresh pretzels filled the air. Among the shoppers was 16-year-old Marcus Carter, an honor student and aspiring graphic designer who had just stepped into Tech Haven to browse the latest tablets. Marcus wasn't looking for trouble, just checking out specs, imagining the kind of digital art he could create if he saved up enough. His mother had always told him that hard work and patience would get him anything he wanted. He believed her. Unfortunately, not everyone in the world played by the same rules. Across the store, a woman named Linda Harrington, though most people would simply call her a Karen, was arguing with a cashier. Mid-50s, blonde bob cut, oversized sunglasses perched atop her head, an expression that practically screamed entitlement. "I don't care what your policy says," she snapped, her voice sharp enough to turn heads. "I bought this phone yesterday and now it's not working. You will replace it. I don't need a receipt." The young employee, a nervous college student, tried to remain professional. "Ma'am, without a receipt or the original packaging, I can't process an exchange. Maybe we can troubleshoot." "Don't patronize me," she snapped, slamming the phone on the counter. "I'll have your job for this," Marcus, standing nearby, sighed. He had seen women like her before, loud, entitled, used to getting their way. He shook his head slightly, mostly to himself, before turning his attention back to the tablet display. That was his first mistake. Karen's hawk-like eyes locked onto him, her lips curling into a sneer. "Excuse me," she barked, marching toward him with the energy of a storm cloud. Marcus blinked, confused. Uh, yes? Don't, yes, me," she snapped. "You need to show some respect. I saw you shake your head." "I wasn't," Marcus began, but she cut him off. "You people are always so disrespectful. No manners, no sense of how to behave in public." His stomach twisted. He had heard this before. "Ma'am," he said, forcing calm into his voice, "I wasn't shaking my head at you." "Oh, so now I'm crazy?" Her voice rose, attracting even more attention. "You think you can just stand there looking all smug, judging me? Like I'm the one in the wrong?" Marcus took a step back, glancing around for an escape. "I don't want any trouble." But Karen wasn't interested in letting him go. Without warning, she raised her hand and smack, her palm connected with his cheek. Gasps erupted around them. Time seemed to freeze. Marcus clutched his face, stunned, his ears ringing from both the impact and the collective shock of onlookers. Karen, however, was smiling. "Maybe that'll teach you some manners." But before she could savor her moment of misplaced triumph, reality came crashing down. Because the entire incident had just been recorded, and justice was about to be served. For a second, there was nothing but silence. Then a collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Marcus barely registered the stares, his face still stinging from the slap. His mind struggled to catch up. Did this woman, this random stranger, just hit him over nothing? Karen, however, was standing tall, arms crossed, her expression smug. "Maybe next time you'll think twice before disrespecting your elders," she said, her voice dripping with self-righteousness. But she had made a grave mistake. Several shoppers had already pulled out their phones the moment her voice had started rising, sensing the makings of a scene. Now at least a dozen cameras were pointed directly at her, capturing everything in full HD. A middle-aged woman standing near the checkout shook her head in disbelief. "Oh, hell no," she muttered under her breath before stepping forward. "Did you just put your hands on that boy?" Karen barely spared her a glance. "Mind your business," she snapped. The woman scoffed. "Well, oh, honey, this is my business now." She turned to Marcus. "Are you okay, baby?" Marcus nodded slowly, though his cheeks still throbbed. His mind screamed at him to do something, say something, but the shock kept him rooted in place. Meanwhile, another voice cut through the murmurs. "Hey, security! Heads turned as a mall security officer, a tall black man with a broad chest and a serious expression, pushed his way through the crowd. His badge read, Officer Daniels. Karen's smirk wavered for the first time. Oh, good, she said, flipping her hair. I was just about to call for security myself. This thug. Ma'am, Daniels cut her off, his voice cool but firm. Step away from the boy. Karen blinked. Excuse me? You heard me. Daniels turned his attention to Marcus. Are you all right, son? Marcus swallowed hard and nodded, his voice finally catching up to him. She hit me, he said quietly. Daniel's jaw tightened. I saw. He gestured to the crowd. And I'm guessing half of these people have it on video. Karen's face paled. What? No, he was being rude, disrespectful. I had every right to. Daniels held up a hand. Ma'am, you just admitted to assaulting a minor. Karen opened her mouth, but no words came out. By now, more people were stepping forward, offering their videos, their statements. The crowd was no longer just spectators. They were witnesses, and they were not on her side. Daniels turned to his radio. We need APD at Best Mall, he said. We've got an assault on a minor, and we have video evidence. Karen let out a laugh, high-pitched, forced. Oh, come on, this is ridiculous. You're really calling the police? Over this? Daniels didn't answer. He didn't need to, because at that moment, the sound of sirens echoed from the parking lot. Karen's face drained of color. Reality had finally caught up to her, and it was too late to turn back now. The sirens grew louder, slicing through the tension in the air. Karen's confidence, so smug, so unshakable just moments ago, crumbled. She took a step back, then another, her eyes darting around as if searching for an escape. But there was none. Officer Daniels kept his gaze locked on her, his posture firm. The crowd had closed in slightly, recording every moment, ensuring that whatever happened next would be seen by thousands, maybe even millions online. This is absurd, Karen muttered, her voice shaking now. I didn't really hurt him. It was just a slap. He was being disrespectful. I was just teaching him a lesson. A murmur of disgust rippled through the bystanders. You assaulted him, Daniels corrected, his voice clipped, and now you're going to answer for it. Just then, the automatic doors of the mall slid open and two uniformed police officers strode inside, their presence commanding immediate attention. A hush fell over the crowd. One of them, a stocky white officer with graying hair, spoke first. We got a report of an assault on a minor. His gaze shifted from Daniels to Marcus, then finally to Karen, who was now clutching her designer purse like a lifeline. Daniels nodded. That's right, Officer Briggs. This woman, he gestured at Karen, slapped the boy across the face. Multiple witnesses, plenty of video evidence. Briggs exhaled through his nose, looking unimpressed. Ma'am, he said, turning to Karen, I need you to come with us. Karen let out a sharp, nervous laugh. Are you serious? Briggs's expression didn't change. Very. You can't arrest me. I'm the victim here. Another wave of murmurs, some disbelieving chuckles from the crowd. Marcus, still standing in shock, was barely processing the scene unfolding before him. It was surreal, watching this woman, so full of venom just minutes ago, unraveling before his eyes. Briggs took a step closer. Ma'am, you can come quietly, or we can cuff you in front of all these people. Karen's mouth opened and closed. Her hands trembled. She turned toward the crowd, as if hoping for support. None came. Instead, someone shouted, Where's that energy now, Karen? A few people laughed. Others just shook their heads in disgust. Karen's breathing became shallow. I have rights. Briggs didn't flinch. And so does he said, nodding at Marcus. You're under arrest for assaulting a minor. Marcus' heart jumped at those words. This was real. Karen let out a strangled cry as Briggs pulled out a pair of handcuffs. No, Wait, this isn't happening. She turned to Marcus, her face wild with desperation. Tell them. Tell them you won't press charges. Marcus stared at her, still feeling the sting on his cheek. Then slowly he shook his head. Not this time. The cuffs snapped around Karen's wrists, and her regret was just beginning. The clinking of the handcuffs sent a ripple of satisfaction through the crowd. Phones were still raised, recording every second, capturing Karen's downfall in real time. She struggled, her face turning red. No, you don't understand. I'm a good person. Briggs ignored her. Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent. I will not remain silent, she screeched. This is ridiculous. I didn't do anything wrong. He disrespected me. I was disciplining him. Marcus swallowed hard, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. The weight of the moment pressed down on him. He wasn't used to attention like this. Ma'am, resisting will only make this worse, Officer Briggs warned as he tightened the cuffs. Karen wasn't listening, even as she jerked her arms, trying to pull away. I know my rights. You're arresting the wrong person. Daniel shook his head. The only wrong thing here is the fact that you thought you could put your hands on a kid and get away with it. A few people in the crowd murmured in agreement. Karen turned, frantically searching for someone, anyone, to take her side. Her eyes landed on a white woman standing near the checkout, a mother with two young kids watching the chaos unfold. You, Karen blurted, desperation clinging to her voice. You understand, right? This is insane. I was just... The woman's face twisted in disgust. She pulled her children closer. No, she said firmly. What's insane is you thinking you could hit someone and not suffer the consequences. Karen's mouth fell open. The realization was sinking in. There was no one coming to her rescue. No one was going to justify what she did because what she did was wrong. Officer Briggs began leading her toward the exit. Come on, let's go. Karen stumbled slightly, her knees wobbly. Wait, can we just talk about this? Her voice had shifted, losing its earlier bravado. Now it was almost pleading. I didn't mean to hurt him. I just wanted to... Briggs wasn't interested in her excuses. You can explain everything downtown, Karen gasped. You're really taking me to jail? Yes, ma'am. Tears sprang to her eyes. But I have a reputation. I have friends. What will people think? Daniels gave a short, humorless laugh. I'm pretty sure they'll think exactly what they just saw. Another wave of murmurs swept through the crowd. Karen's head snapped toward Marcus one last time, eyes wild with desperation. Please, she whispered, don't let them do this. Marcus met her gaze, and for the first time he saw it. Fear. Not the fear of injustice, the fear of consequences. And he wasn't about to save her from them. He exhaled. You did this to yourself. Karen let out a choked sob as she was led through the doors, disappearing into the flashing red and blue lights outside. And just like that, her regret had truly begun. The automatic doors slid shut behind Karen as the police led her into the parking lot. The flashing red and blue lights illuminated her pale face, the reality of her situation sinking in with every step. The crowd inside Tech Haven slowly began to disperse, but the buzz of what had just happened lingered. People whispered, some shaking their heads, others scrolling through their phones, likely already uploading the videos of Karen's downfall. Marcus stood frozen, his heart still pounding. It was over. She was gone. And yet, the sting on his cheek remained. Hey, kid, Officer Daniel said, his voice gentler now. You okay? Marcus blinked, finally pulling himself back into the moment. Yeah, I think so. Daniel studied him for a second, then gave a small nod. Your parents here? Marcus shook his head. No, I just came to check out some tablets. I wasn't expecting. He gestured vaguely toward the doors where Karen had been taken. Daniels exhaled. Nobody expects this kind of thing, but you handled yourself well. Marcus didn't feel like he had handled anything. He had just stood there, stunned, while an entire crowd had come to his defense. The thought made his stomach twist. Do I need to go to the police station or something? He asked hesitantly. Briggs, who had just stepped back inside after escorting Karen to the patrol car, shook his head. Not right now. We've got more than enough witnesses, and the footage speaks for itself. He paused, his expression softening. But if your parents want to press charges, they should contact the station. Marcus swallowed. He wasn't sure what he wanted. Part of him just wanted to go home, pretend this never happened. But the rational side of him, the one that had just witnessed justice unfold, knew that wasn't how the world worked. A warm hand touched his shoulder. He turned to see the woman from earlier, the one who had stood up for him. You sure you're okay, baby? She asked again. Concern etched on her face. Marcus forced a small smile. Yeah, thanks for speaking up. She scoffed. Boy, please. I wasn't about to let that woman get away with that nonsense. No way, not today. She side-eyed the crowd. We're all tired of this kind of mess. A few people murmured in agreement. Marcus exhaled slowly. The weight of what had just happened was settling in. He had been humiliated, but Karen had been held accountable. For once, the system had worked the way it was supposed to. But was it enough? Because deep down he knew Karen wasn't the only one like her. She was just the one who got caught. Marcus took a deep breath, letting the reality of the moment settle over him. He could still feel the weight of every pair of eyes that had been on him, the shock, the outrage, the support. But what now? A part of him just wanted to grab his backpack, walk out of the mall, and pretend this day never happened. But another part of him, the part that had spent years hearing stories of things like this happening to people who looked like him, knew this wasn't something he could just walk away from. Justice had been served, sure, but what about the next time? Because there would be a next time. Officer Daniels must have read the look on his face. He crossed his arms and sighed. I know what you're thinking. Marcus looked up. Yeah? Daniels nodded. You're wondering if any of this actually matters, if Karen getting arrested today will change anything tomorrow. Marcus hesitated, then nodded. Yeah. Daniels let out a short laugh. Kid, I've been in law enforcement for 15 years. You know how many times I've seen someone like her lose it in public because they think the world belongs to them? Marcus didn't answer. He didn't need to. Too many, Daniels continued. But you know what? I've also seen more and more people refusing to stay silent. The old days where people like her got away with this kind of thing. They're fading. And people like you, people who don't back down, even when they're scared, are why. Marcus swallowed. I didn't do anything, though. You stood there, Daniels said firmly. You didn't yell, you didn't fight, you didn't stoop to her level. You let the truth speak for itself. And because of that, justice got served. Marcus glanced around, noticing the nods of agreement from people still lingering nearby. He wasn't used to attention like this, but for the first time since the slap, he didn't feel small. Maybe Daniels was right. Maybe silence wasn't the same as weakness. Briggs clapped a hand on Daniel's shoulder. APD just took Karen downtown. We're done here. He turned to Marcus. If you need anything, or if your folks want to file charges, you know where to reach us. Marcus nodded. Thanks. Briggs gave him a firm nod before walking off. Daniels lingered a moment longer, then pointed at Marcus. Keep that head up, kid. You got nothing to be ashamed of. Marcus managed a small smile. Thanks, officer. Daniels nodded once before turning and heading toward the exit. As Marcus stood there watching the last of the crowd trickle away, he realized something. Today had been awful, but it had also been necessary. And as much as he hated what had happened, he knew one thing for sure. He wouldn't be silent the next time, because the next time might be worse. Marcus finally exhaled, his shoulders relaxing slightly. The tension of the moment had passed, but the weight of it still lingered. He rubbed his cheek absent-mindedly, the sting mostly gone, but the memory of it burning fresh in his mind. He needed to call his mom. Pulling out his phone, he saw dozens of notifications lighting up his screen, texts from friends, social media pings, and missed calls from his mom. She already knows. That thought sent a wave of nerves through him. He quickly tapped her number. She picked up on the first ring. Marcus, baby, are you okay? He could hear the worry in her voice, and for the first time all afternoon, his own voice wavered. Yeah, Mom, I'm okay. I saw the video. Marcus winced. That was fast. Already? It's all over Facebook. Your aunt sent it to me. Baby, what happened? Marcus let out a slow breath. It just happened so fast. She was arguing with the cashier, and then she turned on me. I didn't even say anything to her. He hesitated. She hit me, Mom. A sharp silence. Then, she what? Marcus had never heard his mom sound so angry. Mom, it's okay. No, it is not okay. Her voice was firm, unshakable. Where are you? I'm coming to get you. Marcus glanced around. Still at the mall, by Tech Haven. I'll be there in 10 minutes. He barely had time to respond before she hung up. Marcus sighed, slipping his phone back into his pocket. A part of him had hoped to downplay the situation, but there was no way his mother was going to let this slide. And honestly, maybe she shouldn't. He wandered over to a bench near the store entrance and sat down, his mind still replaying everything that had just happened. Would Karen actually face consequences beyond today? Would she just get a slap on the wrist and be back to her usual entitled behavior by next week? Or had today actually changed something? As he mulled over these thoughts, a familiar voice pulled him from his daze. Hey, kid. Marcus looked up to see the woman from earlier, the one who had spoken up for him, standing there with a small smile. Mind if I sit? She asked. He shook his head. No, go ahead. She plopped down beside him, setting her shopping bags on the floor. You did good today, she said after a moment. Marcus huffed a small laugh. I didn't really do anything. Oh, but you did, she countered. You didn't fight back. You didn't lose your cool. You let the world see her for who she really was. And trust me, people like her, they hate that. Marcus nodded, letting her words sink in. Maybe she was right. Maybe he had done something after all. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Marcus sat in silence for a moment, letting the woman's words settle in. You let the world see her for who she really was. The words echoed in his head. He had seen countless videos like this before, clips of entitled people exposing their own bigotry, their own sense of untouchable privilege. He had watched them, shaken his head and scrolled past. Now he was in one of those videos. The thought made his stomach twist. I don't know, Marcus admitted, rubbing his palms together. It doesn't really feel like I did anything. The woman scoffed. Kid, you didn't have to. She did all the work for you. Marcus let out a small chuckle at that. It was true. Karen had sealed her own fate the second she raised her hand. The woman patted his shoulder. Listen, I know today sucked, and I hate that you had to go through it. But trust me, what happened today, it matters. Marcus wasn't sure if he fully believed that yet. But before he could respond, he spotted a familiar figure storming through the mall entrance. His mom. Her heels clicked against the tile, her purse slung over one shoulder, her expression a mix of worry and barely restrained fury. Oh boy, the woman beside him muttered, with a small smile. She looks like she's about to raise hell. Marcus stood up just as his mother reached him. Without a word, she cupped his face, her eyes scanning for any sign of injury. I'm okay, Mom, Marcus said softly. She exhaled sharply, her fingers brushing over his cheek. I swear to God, if I ever see that woman... She stopped herself, shaking her head. Are you sure you're okay? Marcus nodded. Yeah. Her jaw tightened. I already called a lawyer. His eyes widened. A lawyer? Yes, a lawyer, she said firmly. That woman assaulted you. I don't care if the police already took her in. She's not walking away from this without consequences. Marcus hesitated. I mean, she got arrested. Isn't that enough? His mother gave him a look. Marcus, do you really think people like her stay in jail? He swallowed hard. She had a point. The woman from earlier stood up, giving his mother a nod. You're doing the right thing, she said. Women like her? They count on people not fighting back, on people just letting it go. Marcus' mom exhaled, nodding. Well, she picked the wrong family today. Marcus watched them, a new feeling rising in his chest, something between relief and determination. Maybe he was doing the right thing. Maybe it did matter. And maybe, for the first time today, Karen was the one who was afraid. Marcus sat in the passenger seat of his mother's car, staring out the window as the mall faded into the distance. The adrenaline from earlier had worn off, replaced by a quiet exhaustion. His mother's hands were tight on the wheel, her jaw still set in anger. I don't care how long it takes, she muttered. That woman is going to face real consequences. Marcus nodded, though his thoughts were elsewhere. He pulled out his phone, opening Twitter. Sure enough, the video had already gone viral. Racist Karen slaps black teen in the mall and instantly regrets it. The footage was everywhere. Shared, retweeted, analyzed. People were calling for Karen to be charged, for her job to be investigated, for her to face real consequences. Marcus swallowed, scrolling through the flood of comments. Absolutely disgusting behavior. She thought she could get away with it. People like her always play the victim once the cops show up. Shout out to this kid for keeping his cool. The whole world is on your side, man. He blinked, rereading that last comment. The whole world is on your side. For the first time since it all happened, the weight on his chest felt a little lighter. His mother noticed his silence. What are you thinking? Marcus hesitated, then turned to her. I think people actually care about what happened. Like, really care. She glanced at him, softening. Of course they do, baby. I guess I just didn't think one moment could matter this much. She reached over, squeezing his hand. It does. And you didn't just stand up for yourself today. You stood up for every kid who's ever been treated like they don't belong. And I couldn't be prouder of you. Marcus looked down at their hands, then back at his phone. His notifications were still going crazy. He took a deep breath, then did something he'd never done before. He hit the tweet button. This happened to me today. I didn't expect it. I didn't want it. But I won't let it be for nothing. No one should have to go through this. We have to do better. Within seconds, the likes and retweets started pouring in. Marcus locked his phone and leaned back against the seat, exhaling. Karen was gone. The moment had passed. But the impact, it was just beginning.